You have likely experienced that moment of quiet satisfaction when you log into your banking app and see a healthy, robust number sitting in your savings account. It feels like a victory. You have spent months or perhaps years exercising discipline and saying no to impulse purchases and watching that balance grow. You look at those digits and you tell yourself that you are being responsible and that you are safe. It is a comforting feeling. But I need you to suspend that feeling for a moment, because I'm going to tell you something that might sound completely counterintuitive. That pile of cash you are so proud of might actually be the single biggest obstacle standing between you and true wealth. In fact, keeping too much money in the bank is likely one of the most destructive financial mistakes you're making right now. You believe you are building a fortress of security, but in reality you are building a trap that is slowly draining your life energy and your future freedom. If I told the average person that having too much money in the bank is dangerous, they would look at me like I had lost my mind. We are taught from a very young age that cash is king. We are told that a big savings account is the ultimate scorecard of financial health. But there is a very specific reason your bank wants you to believe that, and it has nothing to do with your well-being. The uncomfortable reality is that every single day your money sits stagnant. In that account, it is dying a slow death. It is rotting away. My name is Charlie, and I have spent an embarrassing amount of time studying the intersection of money and human psychology. If you want to understand how wealth is built, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Let us start by stripping away the illusion of safety. You need to understand exactly what is happening to your money while you sleep. You might think your savings are safe because the number on the screen stays the same. If you have $10,000 in there today, you will have $10,000 in there next year. But money is not valuable because of the number. It is valuable because of what it can buy. While your money sits there doing nothing, inflation is working overtime. It is the invisible tax that never sleeps. The Federal Reserve generally targets an inflation rate of around 2% per year. That sounds like a small, harmless number. You might think you can live with a 2% loss, but you need to look at what that compounding loss does over a decade. If you have $50,000 sitting in a traditional savings account earning practically zero interest and inflation is running at just 3%, you're not just standing still. You're moving backward. In 10 years, that $50,000 will only buy you what $37,000 buys you today. You have not spent a dime yet. You have lost $13,000 of purchasing power. That is not safety. That is a guaranteed loss. We see this happening in the real world every time we go to the grocery store. Think about what a cart full of groceries cost you 5 years ago versus what it costs you today. Think about the price of a decent used car. Think about the cost of housing. A burrito that used to cost $8 is now $12. A mid-range sedan that used to be $25,000 is now $35,000. When you keep your wealth in cash, you are betting that prices will stay the same. That is a bet you will lose every single time. History tells us that cash is a terrible store of value over the long term. So this begs the question, what is the magic number? How much cash is too much? At what point does financial prudence turn into financial paranoia? The answer is actually quite simple math, but it requires you to be brutally honest about your lifestyle. The golden rule that financial experts and wealthy individuals follow is the 3 to 6 month rule. You should have 3 to 6 months of living expenses in a liquid, accessible account. Please notice that I said expenses and not income. This is where people get confused. If you earn $10,000 a month, but you only spend $4,000 a month on your mortgage and food and bills, then your emergency fund calculation should be based on the $4,000 figure. You would need between $12,000 and $24,000 saved. That is it. That is the ceiling. Any dollar you keep in the bank beyond that amount is lazy money. It is unemployed capital that should be out in the world working for you. However, I see people violating this rule constantly. They hoard $50,000 or $100,000 in a checking account. When you ask them why, they usually say they are waiting for a crash, or they just like the feeling of security. They convince themselves they need a 12-month or 24-month runway, just in case the entire global economy collapses. This is not financial intelligence. This is financial anxiety. It is fear masquerading as strategy. Let us dig into why this is so damaging. We have already talked about inflation, but the bigger threat is opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the price you pay for not taking an action. It is the wealth you destroy by choosing safety over growth. Imagine two people. Let us call them Sarah and Mike. Both of them have $50,000 in savings. They both need $20,000 for a fully funded emergency fund. That leaves $30,000 of excess cash. Sarah is afraid of the stock market, so she keeps her $30,000 in a savings account. Mike understands opportunity costs, so he takes that $30,000 and invests it in a diversified portfolio of index funds. Let us assume the market returns a historical average of 7 to 8% after inflation over the next 30 years. Sarah keeps her money in the bank. After 30 years, she still has her $30,000, but because of inflation, it is probably worth about $10,000 in today's purchasing power. She has lost money. Mike, on the other hand, let his money compound. At an 8% return, his $30,000 grows to over $300,000. Please let that sink in. The decision to feel safe cost Sarah nearly $300,000. That is the price of her comfort. She paid $250,000 premium just to see a stable number in her bank account. When you frame it that way, you realize that hoarding cash is actually one of the most expensive luxuries in the world. I can hear the objections already. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking about market crashes. You are thinking about recessions. You are asking what happens if I invest the money and the market drops 50% tomorrow. This is the voice of fear, and it's a terrible financial advisor. Yes, the stock market crashes. It has crashed many times in history. We had the dot-com bubble. We had the 2008 financial crisis. We had the 2020 pandemic crash. But here's the data point that matters. Every single one of those crashes was temporary. The market has recovered from 100% of its crashes and gone on to reach new highs. When you hoard cash because you are afraid of a crash, you are trying to avoid a temporary drop in value by accepting a permanent drop in value through inflation. It is illogical. You are so afraid of losing money that you guarantee you will lose money. The concept of too much cash is also personal. A 22-year-old living in an apartment with no dependents and a stable job has a very different risk profile than a 45-year-old with 3 kids and a mortgage. The 22-year-old might only need 3 months of expenses. They can afford to be aggressive. The 45-year-old might feel better with 6 months. But almost nobody needs 12 months or 2 years of cash sitting in a checking account. We have to address the psychology here because money is rarely about math. It is about emotion. For many people, that bank balance is an emotional blanket. It makes them feel in control in a chaotic world. You can open your app and see the number, and it does not fluctuate. It is predictable. But that emotional comfort is expensive. Real financial security does not come from a pile of cash. Real security comes from assets. It comes from owning things that produce income. It comes from owning businesses or real estate or stocks that grow faster than inflation. Wealthy people do not measure their success by how much cash they have in the bank. In fact, many wealthy people are surprisingly cash poor relative to their net worth. They keep their money moving. They treat money like an employee. If an employee showed up to work and sat at their desk doing absolutely nothing all day, you would fire them. Yet you let your money sit in your savings account doing nothing for years, and you pat yourself on the back for it. There is another player in this game that we need to expose. The banks. The banking industry has done a phenomenal job of brainwashing the public. They run advertisements showing happy families opening savings accounts. They give you cash bonuses for opening new accounts. Why do they do this? Because your deposits are their raw material. When you put your money in a savings account, the bank pays you a tiny fraction of interest. Maybe they pay you 0.5%. Then they turn around and lend that same money out to your neighbor for a car loan at 7% or a credit card at 25%. They are making a fortune on the spread. They are using your money to get rich while paying you pennies. You are essentially providing them with free inventory. When you hoard cash, you are being a great customer for the bank, but a terrible manager of your own wealth. So if we accept that hoarding cash is bad, what is the alternative? What should you actually do with that excess $30,000? The answer depends on your goals, but the principles are universal. You need to move that money into assets. For most people, the simplest and most effective strategy is the stock market. I am not talking about picking individual stocks or trying to time the market or day trading crypto. I am talking about boring low-cost index funds. These are funds that buy a tiny piece of every major company in the economy. When you buy an S&P 500 index fund, you are betting on American business. Over the last century, that has been a very good bet. If the stock market scares you too much, you can look at real estate. Real estate is less liquid, which means you cannot sell it as quickly, but it provides tangible value. It provides cash flow if you buy rental properties. It acts as a hedge against inflation, because when prices go up, rents and property values usually go up too. Another option is debt repayment. If you have credit card debt or high-interest student loans, paying those off is a guaranteed return on investment. If you are paying 20% interest on a credit card and you pay it off, you have effectively earned a 20% return on your money tax-free. There is no investment in the world that can beat that risk-free return. But perhaps the best investment you can make with that excess cash is in yourself. This is what Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett always talk about. If you use that money to learn a new skill or get a certification or start a side business, the return on investment can be infinite. A $2,000 course that teaches you how to negotiate a $10,000 raise pays for itself 5 times over in the first year alone. That is better than any stock. The problem is that most people suffer from analysis paralysis. They know they should invest, but they are overwhelmed by the options. They spend months reading blogs and watching videos trying to find the perfect strategy. They want to know the exact right day to enter the market. Let me save you some time. The perfect strategy does not exist. The perfect time to invest was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Time in the market beats timing the market. The cost of waiting is higher than the cost of making a slightly imperfect investment choice. Now let us talk about how to actually implement this without having a panic attack. I am not suggesting you log off right now and dump your entire life savings into the market in one lump sum. That is emotionally difficult, and if the market drops next week, you will panic and sell at a loss. Instead, use a strategy called dollar cost averaging. Let us say you calculate your expenses and realize you have $20,000 of excess cash that you do not need for emergencies. Plan to move that money into investments over the course of 6 months. Transfer $3,000 a month automatically. This removes the emotion. It prevents you from trying to time the market. If the market goes down, you buy more shares at a discount. If the market goes up, your existing shares gain value. You win either way. As you start to drain your excess cash reserves, you might feel something I call cash withdrawal syndrome. It is a genuine physical anxiety. You will look at your bank account and see a smaller number than you are used to. Your brain will trigger a fear response. You need to prepare for this. Remind yourself that the money is not gone. It has just moved houses. It moved from a house where it was sleeping on the couch to a house where it is building muscle. Over time, something magical happens to your mindset. You stop obsessing over saving pennies and you start focusing on creating dollar. You become an investor. You start to see the world differently. You see inflation not as a threat, but as a reason to grow. You stop looking for safety and start looking for opportunity. So here's your homework assignment. Tonight, sit down with your bank statements. Calculate exactly what it costs you to stay alive for 1 month. Multiply that number by 6. Look at your savings balance. Subtract your 6-month number from your total balance. That remaining number is your potential wealth. That is the army of the soldiers you have left sitting in the barracks when they should be out fighting the war for your financial freedom. Make a plan to deploy them. It does not have to happen overnight, but it has to happen. Stop letting the bank get rich off your fear. Stop letting inflation steal your hard work. Take control of your capital.